The Commonwealth of Kentucky's history is full of legend and lore, one that sometimes defies explanation. This is Haunted Historic Kentucky.
Hello and welcome to Haunted Historic Kentucky with the Kentucky Historical Society. I'm Doug High, the director of the Kentucky Historical Society Foundation and the host of Kentucky History Treasures, seen every week on ABC 36 News.
And I'm Lisa High, co-host of ABC 36 News at Noon.
And we are probably like a lot of couples out there. One of the partners might have a little more of an open mind to the supernatural or the haunted.
Yeah, that would be me in the marriage. And then also there's one, well, he has to see it to believe it.
All right, guilty as charged. But I am coming around to this idea of the Bigfoot myth based on all the cable shows you make me watch.
Myth?
Since joining the team here at the Kentucky Historical Society in Frankfort, I have been astounded at the number of artifacts in our collection that are reportedly haunted.
And with Halloween right around the corner, we at ABC 36 thought it would be the perfect time to showcase some of these spooky items and stories in this 30-minute special. So thanks for joining us.
So in this next half hour, we are going to take you on a tour of haunted historic Kentucky history, including a conjured chest of drawers with a body count, a Civil War era musical instrument with a history so horrific it just has to be haunted, and many other artifacts with a creepy story to tell, pulled straight from our archives. We'll talk with KHS historians and staff who will share these tales of terror with us, and then you'll have to decide for yourself. Just a great story, or could there be something to it?
So, up first, one of the most prized artifacts right here in the collection at the Kentucky Historical Society, Abraham Lincoln's very own pocket watch. Now, I understand that this gave one of your historians quite a scare.
Sure did.
Let's hear her story.
The Kentucky Historical Society has some really special objects with great stories of Kentuckians of note, but probably on the top of that list is a pocket watch that was owned by Abraham Lincoln. At the time the movie Lincoln was being created, we were actually approached by Skywalker Sound. They were searching out authentic sounds to go into the movie Lincoln. Spielberg sent a sound expert to the Kentucky Historical Society to record the ticking of Lincoln's actual watch. We had taken a lot of steps to make sure that the watch would not be harmed by winding it up. So prior to this sound expert arriving, our watch expert inspected the watch, made sure that it was in perfect order. I was there when our watch expert carefully wound the watch for the first time. And we sat there and listened to it tick for a little over a minute. And when it stopped at 4:15, the month and the day that Abraham Lincoln died. When they were recording the sound for the movie, the watch was wound, they did the recording, and when it stopped at 7:22, which is the hour and the minute Lincoln died. Certainly a lot of museums would be thrilled to have an iconic piece like this that belonged to Lincoln, and we're so fortunate that we have it on display in our permanent gallery.
Wow. Thanks to KHS curator Julie Kemper, a very eerie story about one of our most treasured artifacts that came from Kentucky's most famous son.
That's right. Okay, so Doug, do you think that an item, a personal item like a pocket watch, could have some sort of residual energy attached to it?
I'm not sure. We don't even know if this was the watch that Lincoln was carrying during the assassination. We know of two in existence, one in the Smithsonian, one here at the Kentucky Historical Society. But if a traumatic event can leave some sort of residual energy behind, well, after that story, I'm not quite prepared to say no.
When we return, quilting has quite a history and remains a great artistic skill, and typically it evokes thoughts of home and hearth and family.
But you've never seen anything quite like the graveyard quilt. It's one of a kind. It's here in our collection, and we're going to introduce you to it when Haunted Historic Kentucky with the Kentucky Historical Society returns.
Welcome to Expree, an organization all about care and craft. And as Kentuckians, we know a thing or two about both. It's the recipe for good bourbon and good banking. Esprit is determined to make a difference, simply by being different, much like these Kentucky legends. We've been around for a while, and we know how to handcraft solutions for you, your personal financial cheerleader. We're Esprit Credit Union, and this is Spirited Banking.
Hey, welcome back to Haunted Historic Kentucky with the Kentucky Historical Society. Doug and Lisa High here with you, and we are in the vast museum storage here at KHS in Frankfort, where thousands and thousands of Kentucky's history treasures are stored, including this very interesting quilt.
Yes, now you know I love quilts. We have one from your grandmother, and it is my go-to for the couch. It is so beautiful and so comfortable, and it reminds us of family.
Right, well, this one accomplishes some of those same things, but it takes a little different track getting there. Let's get introduced to the graveyard quilt.
This is a handmade quilt. It is made of cotton and calico fabrics. It was made by Elizabeth Roseberry Mitchell in 1843. And what this quilt depicts is a basic quilt design, but if you look around the perimeter of the quilt, you're gonna see coffins. And these coffins they're made of cotton fabric, but there are paper labels on each one that signify one of Elizabeth's relatives. And if you move into the center of the quilt, you'll see that there is a path with a fence on either side, and in the center is a graveyard. And so what she used this quilt for was a way to process her grief. But the piece is a great example of 19th century mourning customs tradition, acknowledging death and mortality and how real it was to these people. It wasn't going to a funeral home, and that death to a certain extent now is disconnected from home. But for Elizabeth, this is something she's experiencing. She's seen 2 of her children pass away, and this quilt is an outlet for her to memorialize her children and also to acknowledge her own mortality. A quilt like this is extremely rare. We have nothing like it in the collection. I haven't seen anything else like this anywhere else.
Rare, yes, and the subject might seem a bit odd today, but a great example from many days gone by of a mother capturing her family history with the storytelling device at hand, quilt making.
Our thanks to Beth Carter for introducing us to this amazing artifact. You know, I love quilts, but I would not snuggle up with this thing for a night of Netflix on the couch. Definitely one-of-a-kind creepy. Well, Doug has left me here with this scary quilt and made his way back to the museum floor to introduce us to yet another reportedly haunted item, but this time it's furniture. So Doug, how bad can it be?
Well, pretty bad actually, Lisa, thanks. This chest of drawers behind me actually has a body count, according to legend. Our Greg Hardison is going to share the twisted tale of the Conjured Chest.
The story of this artifact begins about 1830. John Graham is expecting a son, and in order to prepare for that, he wants to have a chest made, and he asks an enslaved man on his property to create this chest. It's a beautiful mahogany veneered chest of drawers with acanthus leaves and beautiful Greek scroll work on the column. A beautiful chest, but for some reason, Graham did not like the chest, and he actually killed the enslaved man that had built the chest, a man named Remus. Remus's friends and family that were also enslaved by the Graham family rebutted. They took the blood of an owl and sprinkled it on the chest, thereby cursing the chest so that anyone that used it afterwards would die. And the story continues on through 18 different deaths associated directly with the cursed chest.
What we know about the chest came from Virginia Carey Hudson Cleveland, as a precocious Victorian-era child who loved to write down her grandmother's stories. Additional family generations carried the story forward, including the bizarre and lengthy ritual to break the curse.
So we know about this not only through the writings of Virginia Carey Hudson, but in the top drawer of the chest to this day, there is an owl feather and a little note that says it's to keep away the curse. So this story that had a very tragic list of people that lost their lives as a result of it. Virginia wanted to, as she passed it down to her daughter, she wanted to keep it out of the hands of anyone else that could possibly accidentally put clothes in it. And so they donated it to the Kentucky Historical Society in 1976 in hopes that no one would ever place clothes in it again. So after all these years, it's been on display and been stored here in our collection storage. Our staff is sure to make sure we never put anything in that chest of drawers.
Well, our thanks to Greg Hardison for sharing that tale of the Conjured Chest, and I promise you, this staff will never, ever put anything in that chest of drawers. I think history has taught us that. Coming up next, a Civil War musical instrument tied to a ghastly event. The story of the haunted coronet when Haunted Historic Kentucky returns.
Welcome back to Haunted Historic Kentucky with the Kentucky Historical Society. And Doug, we're in one of your favorite sections on the museum floor here in Frankfort, Kentucky in the Civil War.
Yeah, incredible history here. Great displays and artifacts that totally immerse you into those bloody years. I learn something new every time I walk through.
Well, with all of that heartache and conflict, let me ask you something. Can a Civil War musical instrument be haunted?
Well, our Stuart Sanders is going to take us back to 1864 for the story of the haunted coronet.
The Kentucky Historical Society has a number of objects and artifacts that really help us tell important stories about the American Civil War. And one of our artifacts, in addition to telling important stories, also has a fun legend attached to it as well. In July 1864, near Marietta, Georgia, Joseph Dudley and other members of the 16th Kentucky Infantry Regiment were camped outside of that town. And Dudley was probably getting ready to go to sleep. A number of his comrades would have been in there. And that night, as they drifted off to sleep, this terrible thunderstorm rolled in. And unfortunately for Dudley, there was a crack of thunder and a tree actually fell over on the tent, crushing Dudley and killing him instantly. Despite this, it's very miraculous that the coronet that the Kentucky Historical Society now has actually remained unscathed in this accident. And today, one legend holds that if anyone were to play that coronet, that another terrible thunderstorm would blow in, wreaking havoc.
Of course, no one at the Kentucky Historical Society has put the haunted coronet to the test, but the legend does make for an interesting twist on a tragic Civil War story.
It's a great legend that we have here as part of this object, but more importantly, this important artifact helps us tell stories about common soldiers during the Civil War and lets us interpret the fact that even though there were terrible battles that were raging, most soldiers ended up dying from either disease or illness or accidents during the Civil War.
Okay, I don't care if you believe it or not, just don't play the cornet, just don't do it. It's an easy fix. Special thanks to Stuart Sanders for sharing that spooky chapter of Kentucky's rich Civil War history. And if you want to see the haunted cornet, it is on display right here in Frankfort. Doug has made his way back upstairs to archive storage where he is going to be introduced to a macabre menagerie of artifacts. Stay tuned.
Well, Lisa nailed it. This is a macabre menagerie of items up here. We're back in museum storage at the Kentucky Historical Society, and we want to introduce you to Jessica Stavros. She's our deputy director here at KHS, and she's going to walk us through some of these items. Now, there's definitely a creepy vibe going on. That's safe, correct?
Yeah, this is the creepy corner of the collection. Now, we rely on information to come up with interpretation and ideas of how history happened, but sometimes we don't have the information and some things are just plain creepy. So we'll start with Clara McBride's hair. Clara McBride was a Kentuckian, and like many women in the early 20th century, she had very long auburn hair, and 1920 came along and she decided to bob it off.
Time for bobs.
Yeah, so this is the hair that she kept in a cigar box in our collection. So imagine opening up a cigar box and finding a box of hair.
And it's beautifully preserved, I must say.
And in the 19th and early 20th centuries, hair was one of those things that people really held on to connect themselves to another person, whether they be deceased.
This could be cherished by a family member.
Absolutely. Also cherished by families for generations is this portrait we have.
Look at this gentleman.
His name was Colonel Blackburn. He was born in the 1780s and lived until after the Civil War, so he was about 80 years old, but as you notice, he's only got one eye.
Got one eye going here.
Now, we don't know how he lost his eye, but again, imagine that house where this is hanging in the hallway and the candles flicker at night.
Yes. The creepiest element of all is really drawing me in here. Introduce us to this gentleman, Jessica.
This is the Jimmy doll.
Jimmy
now,
doll.
His eyes are a little glass or plastic cover, and they have a little filament in them, so it looks like the eyes used to light up.
Wow.
Now, Jimmy doll was won by a little boy. He was 12 years old, and this is about 1910. He won it at a carnival in Cynthiana, Kentucky. His name was Hammy. Now, Hammy and his two brothers all fought in World War I.
Wow.
Hammy's mother held on to the doll to kind of keep the boys safe while they were at war. Not only did all three boys serve in World War I, but they were all registered for the draft in World War II, and we did find a record of all three of them after World War II.
Wow. Again, this is a loving tribute to Kentuckians who served.
Absolutely.
But today, a little scary
Now,
as it lives here in our archive.
The mother put a World War I uniform on them, so it kind of makes it like a talisman or a lucky charm.
Right.
We are superstitious, or maybe a little stitious as people, but these really speak to the power of objects and the meaning that people give to them.
Well, thank you, Jessica, for a little creepy with context. Haunted Historic Kentucky returns after this.
Welcome to Expree, an organization all about care and craft. And as Kentuckians, we know a thing or two about both. It's the recipe for good bourbon and good banking. Expree is determined to make a difference, simply by being different, much like these Kentucky legends. We've been around for a while, and we know how to handcraft solutions for you, your personal financial cheerleader. We're Expree Credit Union, and this is Spirited Banking.
Hey, welcome back to Haunted Historic Kentucky here at the Kentucky Historical Society. We have Dana Zinger with us from the KHS staff. We're back in museum storage, and Dana, you've continued our macabre menagerie of items here. Walk me through this. What do we have going on here?
Okay, so these two arrived together. The beaded necklace was in this sewing kit, and it arrived anonymously here in the year 2000. So we don't know who donated this item.
Really? Okay.
But whoever it was probably just wanted to get rid of it. Two prominent Kentuckians back in the 1820s were betrothed, and the attentions and the charms of a lady took the man away. And yes, so the jilted lover made these beads.
I can actually see some writing on there. Read for us what's on these cursed beads.
Yet go thou base deserter, go, and if some happier dame has kindled in thy breast the glow of love's deceitful flame.
Wow.
So she was
a little upset.
Yeah. A little upset. So the jilted lover gave the beads to her ex-fiance, and his new wife liked the beads, so she put them on and died within a year.
Wow.
So, and then every 13 years after that, something bad would happen to this gentleman until he died.
Until he passed away.
Supposedly, the next person that received it every 13 years.
Wow. Okay, definitely creepy. Now, what about this ring beside it here?
Okay. So this ring belonged to John Rowan, who was a very prominent Kentuckian. John Rowan and Dr. James Chambers, both prominent residents of Bardstown, both of them under the age of 30, they were young, were at a tavern drinking one night, and things got heated. And then after that, Dr. James Chambers called out John Rowan to a duel. This was February 3rd, 1801. They actually dueled. And this happened just right outside of Bardstown. They dueled, and Dr. Chambers was fatally shot. The ring actually contains a tidbit of Dr. Chambers' hair, and so Rowan apparently had that fashioned into a ring and wore that. Kind of as a little trophy.
Not creepy at all.
So.
Dana, thanks so much for sharing these stories. And if you want to request these items to do some research, or if you just want to view them online, visit history.ky.gov. We're going to check in with Lisa, who's learning more about the mission here at the Kentucky Historical Society.
We have so enjoyed our haunted tour of the Kentucky Historical Society. We sat down with Executive Director Scott Alvey to talk about their mission here.
The Kentucky Historical Society is a membership organization at its founding. In 1836, a group of people realized that if we didn't start to collect Kentucky's past, we might soon forget about it. This is the time when the pioneers were still with us, and so they wanted to make sure they captured their stories, either their oral traditions or the items that they had. And from that, we've continued to grow. We've collected and maintained these large archives of research materials, of objects from all across the Commonwealth, some of the most diverse collections in Kentucky history that you'll find anywhere else in the world. And it's at its core is our members. We all share that passion for Kentucky history, whether it is talking about our families, whether it's talking about where we live, or just the events that have happened around us. We all share that same passion for Kentucky history. The Kentucky Historical Society's mission is to educate and engage through Kentucky history so that we may meet the challenges of the future. We believe that history has a power that lead us to action, that can inform the direction that we want to go, not just where we've been, but who we want to be. One of our greatest assets is to be able to let people interact and discover their Kentucky history. Online is probably your best way. We're open 24/7 through our online aspects. You can go in and research through the different catalogs. You can peruse all the items that we have here in storage on our online archive and learn more about them at your own pace and at your own leisure. We're in the process of working with schools on what are the materials that might aid and assist the teachers in teaching in a virtual environment about Kentucky history. So those are just a few of the adjustments we've done to make a virtual environment to still be accessible. Now we have looked at modifications within the operations that would provide a safe environment for staff and for visitors to come do research in the library, to visit the museums. The Kentucky Historical Society is a world-class organization. We have people obviously come to us to visit who are locals and from Kentucky, but we have people come worldwide to do research on family history research and in our archives, sometimes even to explore our haunted history.
Well, it has been a fun, informative, and downright creepy 30 minutes. We appreciate you being with us.
Now, okay, Doug, did we make a believer out of you?
Well, I'm always down for a great history story with some legend and lore sprinkled in for some flavor.
Well, if you want to get up close and personal with some of this haunted history that we've shared with you, there's a couple ways of doing that.
Right. Now, many of the artifacts that we've shown you in this program are on display right here in Frankfort at the Kentucky Historical Society. A few of these items are too fragile for display, but you can check them out online at history.ky.gov.
Our thanks to the historians, curators, and staff right here at the Kentucky Historical Society for their hospitality and for sharing their great haunted Kentucky stories with us.
So, on behalf of ABC 36 and the Kentucky Historical Society, thanks for joining us, and keep deep diving into that rich Kentucky history.
And try to keep an open mind when things get a little hard to believe.